All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Catherine. And hi, everyone. Long time no see. I am going to share my screen now and go through this talk. Lockdown Luthier, a self-learning plan. That's what I'll be talking about today. So who am I? I am an actuary by day and an amateur luthier by night and weekends. So my day job is all about risk and using mathematics to put a number on them. So this here is a very self-descriptive t-shirt. And as Katie said, during the pandemic, I had to fix my guitar. I picked it up after a break of about 25 years of not playing. And suddenly I realized I don't know how to maintain my guitar. I don't know how to change strings. But not only that, I wasn't quite sure about the sound I was making. And there was this buzz, and I couldn't understand what that was. And since this was giving me so much joy, I decided to fix it myself because all the workshops were closed. And I found a lot of joy in Lutherie and decided I think I'd like to do more of that. And a little secret, now that I know more, I think I fixed my guitar incorrectly, but that's okay. That's for another day. So in this talk, I'll be talking about my personal experience. It's not a general guide. I will talk about what I found to be the advantages and disadvantages of being an amateur, the first plan that I had, some of the advantages and disadvantages in more detail, and then what my plan looks like today. So being an amateur, I think, is a luxury. And this is why I can be a student to many teachers. So those of you on the call, a lot of you might not know it, but if I follow you on Instagram, you have been my teacher at some point. There's so much material on social media and YouTube of people sharing their experience, posting about what they're doing, even short videos on Instagram of 15 seconds. I can learn something from just watching what you do. So thank you. Another luxury of being an amateur is that I have the luxury of time. I determine how much time I need. I can work at my own pace, which leads to the opportunity of making mistakes in a comfortable setting and to also be able to experiment. And because I knew I was going to make a lot of mistakes, I thought, well, let's not do it in one place. I'm going to localize my error making potential, and I will have many projects, and each project is going to be for an area of mistakes. But an unintended side effect was also learning about my working style and my habits. Having time and being able and comfortable to make mistakes, I realized that I was able to observe my working habits in slow motion, almost in a controlled environment. And you know what? This has actually improved my life and my day job because now I know how to tackle some of, say, the areas where I would have been stressed before because I was able to watch myself building an instrument. So this is the luxury. What were the difficulties of being an amateur? The excitement, too much excitement. I had too many ideas, which meant a lot of my future plans were not simple. And I don't think that was a very good thing for me. And next, there was woodworking experience. I had no experience whatsoever. To give you some context, a couple of years ago, my neighbor gave me a pumpkin so I can carve it for Halloween. After a couple of days of looking at the pumpkin, I started Googling pumpkin soup recipes. So that's how much I knew about woodworking. And then there was material. I wasn't quite sure what material to use, what their properties are, what their characteristics are, what's easy to use, what's easy to get. I knew nothing. And the same with tools. I wasn't quite sure what tools to get. How do I use these tools? And how do I use them safely? Because they were sharp. And then the fact that I was working on my own, it meant that I had to assess the quality of my own work, self-critique, rather than getting instructions from teacher and feedback about how I did. And my workshop was my dining table, so I had very limited workshop space. Using hand tools was a necessity, but now it's a choice because I realized I really enjoy them more than using rotary tools. I also had a very simple understanding of the process, which meant that my initial plan lacked focus. I basically planned to build all guitars, all of them. It wasn't focused enough. And then patience. Some of the steps, by virtue of what you're doing, require a long time. And some steps require a wait of some time before going to them. And that was driving me a little bit crazy. And the excitement of wanting to finish a step meant that this was a part of the process that was quite difficult for me to navigate. I didn't enjoy the wait so much. And then, of course, there's the cost. There's an initial investment in tools and books. And sometimes the tools that I bought were the wrong tools because I wasn't quite sure what to get. Now, this has changed. So let me show you my unfocused 2-year plan that I had when I decided to venture further into a Lutherie. So my first build, I will start with the kit, cheap wood, so that the mistakes aren't very expensive. I will practice assembly on a small scale and fretwork and some finishing. After that, I was going to get another guitar kit and practice assembly, but on a larger scale, more fretwork, practice pore filling and grafts and a different finishing technique. And the third instrument that I wanted to build was also going to be from a kit. And it was going to be so that I can practice assembly, but faster, practice headstock and fretboard inlays, and make a rosette. The fourth instrument was meant to be a from scratch acoustic guitar. And there I was planning to work on bending the sides, carving the neck, joining the top and the back, and use material that was easy to work with. And the only reason for that is so that I can maximize my my chance of success. No need to use something that's difficult for the first scratch build. But then I also thought I'm going to build electric guitars too. So I thought I'll start with a cigar box electric guitar, and this way I can practice some of the electrical work, and then move to a from scratch electric guitar, which was going to have body carving and body engraving and more electric practice. And in parallel, across all of these builds, I was going to learn about theory and find a way to see them in practice by perhaps finding a workshop where I can work part-time as an apprentice, for example, because I still had to keep my day job. And I had many projects for inlays and rosettes and refretting a neck, because I thought if I do that, then I'll learn more about fretwork. This was my plan. Let's start looking at some of the advantages of being an amateur through my plan. Mistakes as an advantage. So this here is a picture of my assembled ukulele body. The light should not be showing. I did not assemble it very well. So first opportunity with mistakes is to fix them. Understand why they happened, and that's because I did not have enough clamping. Next opportunity is to figure out how to fix them. I unglued the body, the assembled body, using water, heat, a blade, and patience. And even more patience because this iron didn't work. So I had to use a hairdryer as a source of heat. I unglued it, and I think it was unglued cleanly because I took my time with the disassembly. Now that I have learned why the mistake happened, I can avoid it. And that was another advantage of making mistakes. I did a lot better job when it comes to clamping. And you can see that here, there isn't a lot of light coming out. There was a little bit, but it was a lot better than the first try. So this is one thing that I did with mistakes, fix them. Another thing that I did with mistakes, I turned them into features. And these worked with varying success. Different ideas worked better than others, but that is the beauty of experimentation. That was an advantage of being an amateur. So this is the joined body of the ukulele. I was not happy with the joining. It was imperfect. I didn't like the way that the glue showed. So I decided to move the end graft from my second build practice to my first build. And I decided to experiment with shells. So I got shells from a beach, which was close to where I live, and I processed them myself. And then I ground them into fine and coarse powder and used it for the end graft. Now, it looked good at this stage. It didn't evolve to be how I wanted it or intended it to look, but I was still happy with it. Another thing that I did was mistakes. You can tell I made a lot of mistakes. So another thing that I did was I changed my plans. So when I was wet sanding the finished ukulele, I found some bare wood on the headstock. Now, I could have gone and started from scratch, but because I realized that most mistakes can be fixed, but you will need to put in a lot of time or a lot of effort, and it might be disproportionate. So I decided instead of starting from scratch, I'll keep the headstock as it is with the bare wood and just make the rest of the instrument look older, as if this was wear and tear. So what I did is I did more wet sanding. I added color to some areas of the headstock, and I added some dents to the back of the neck. In fact, this is a signature of my own guitars that have dents because of my thumb ring. So I went and I replicated these dents on the back of the ukulele's neck, and I thought that it looked really good. I was very happy with the outcome. So these were mistakes. These are 3 things that I did with mistakes. I fixed them, I changed my plan, or I turned them into features. Now, another point that was a disadvantage, this is the disadvantage of being an amateur, is that there sometimes isn't someone to give me instructions on how to do things or feedback on how I did it. So I have to assess my own work. And I can sometimes be a bit harsh, but even if I'm not, that does not necessarily mean that my assessment was correct. For example, aligning the neck of the ukulele, I only needed to remove about 1.5 millimeters. It took me 12 hours. And I wasn't quite sure, was it meant to take this long? Was I doing it wrong? I thought I must be doing it incorrectly. This should not take 12 hours. And I started thinking, I must have ruined the neck. I don't think the ukulele will ever play in tune. And these are all healthy questions to ask. And I had to find the answers for them. And the answers made me feel better about what I was doing. But if I were, for example, apprenticing, then I would have probably been given the answers. And yes, this is a difficult part of the process, and it can take time. But now let's look at some of the progress. One of my mini projects was to build a rosette. And this is where Women in Lutherie came along, and then the Women in Lutherie Fellowship. And then my mentor, Flor Centurion, who was very supportive and was very generous for her support as well. She actually offered me a place on her online course for free of charge. And I just went in and I've learned how to make rosettes, which was one of my objectives. And this is an attempt that I made to replicate one of her rosettes on her guitar. It was a lot of fun and it appealed to the geek in me. The thing about this experience, though, it was a little bit beyond learned on a technical side. The course was in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. So I got to be in the shoes of someone who is in the middle of a large group of people who speak a different language. And that was quite an eye-opening experience for me. It was personal development, not just technical development as an amateur luthier. Another bit of progress on the projects that I had. So I had my mini projects for inlay. I bought an East Indian rosewood fretboard, and I thought this is going to be my practice fretboard. I am going to cover it from top to bottom and then flip it around and then cover it again with inlays. I'm going to use different materials, different techniques, and see how they work. And my plan was, this was my first inlay. And I thought I will replicate the same inlay as the last one on my fretboard. And this way I can actually see how much better I got at this, first and last. And then fretwork, that was something that I thought that was going to be very time consuming, and it is. But I really enjoyed it. It kind of felt a little bit like meditation. But I decided that I was going to put a halt to my plan to buy a used neck and refret it, and just concentrate on the fretwork as part of my guitar building process. So these were some of the features of the experience of being an amateur. But it was very important to have courage, not necessarily self-confidence, because I wasn't always confident that I was going to be able to do what I was going to do next. But I thought I was going to give it a shot anyway. Some parts of the process, they definitely felt like adrenaline. 3 heartbeats for the price of 1, like too much coffee. And some tasks actually felt like they were too difficult, and I thought, I'm sure I'm going to make mistakes, or it might fail. And I started an online journal. I thought, I'm going to put this all in public. I'm going to take risks. I'm going to embrace my failed attempts, and then I'm going to celebrate my success when I fix them. And then I will try it all over again. And it worked really well. It has been a very fulfilling experience for me. So let me show you my updated plan. Remember all the different instruments I had in mind? Well, my first build, the ukulele, I have done the assembly on a small scale, done some fretwork, I've used cheap material, but I also added the end graft and the headstock inlay, and I've done pore filling. So I've moved some of my future objectives into the first build. My next build is no longer going to be from a kit. It is going to be a guitar from scratch, an acoustic guitar from scratch. And I picked material that is going to be easy to work with, so that I can maximize my chances of success. And then, because there are a few things that are worse than having a poor outcome, but not because of what you're doing or how you're doing it, but because the material doesn't help. And I'm also planning to bend the sides, join the top and the back, make a rosette and an end graft. Then from 3 to 5, I had 3 different instruments in my initial plan. My current plan is just to continue with building acoustic guitars from scratch. And the only objective for each one of those builds is to make a better instrument than the one before it. I'm also going to continue with the theory. There is so much to learn. And I have learned that now. I've learned that there's way too much for me to learn in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. I think I'm going to be a perpetual student, which is not a bad thing. I think I'll just keep making better instruments. I've also changed my mini projects. I am still going to be doing my inlays. In fact, next weekend, I will be changing my guitar strings, and I will be recycling these strings by using them as inlay material on my practice fretboard. I'm going to continue with Rosettes, and I am going to learn about electrics. That might be something that I do in a few years. But for now, I'm focusing my learning and my development on acoustic guitars. And you know what they say about beauty being in the eye of the beholder? It is very true. The work that I did with passion, and it was giving me so much joy, and I was very happy with it. So to me, it looked beautiful. After learning more and seeing more people's work, I still think my work is beautiful, but I think I'm seeing it as a beholder who's got the clarity of glasses, which is a very good thing because it means that I'll be able to develop a little bit more. So let me show you my next guitar. This is what I'll be working on. I bought the wood before I finished my ukulele. I thought it was a good motivator for me, and it was a good thing to look forward to. So I am going to build a steel string acoustic modeled over a 1933 Martin OM guitar. Pau Ferro back and sides, Carpathian spruce top, mahogany neck, and ebony fretboard bridge and head plate. And I can't wait to start it. But in my usual fashion, I am still planning how I'm going to do it. And once I'm done with that plan, I will start. And that is all from me, if anybody has any questions.
All right, that was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do actually have one question in the Q&A right now, which is from Lillian, asking, do you consider Lutherie your full-time activity, or planning to make it a profession? Or your free time activity, or are you planning to make it a profession? My apologies.
I would love to make it a profession one day, but I'm not good enough to be able to make income from it at the time being. So it is possibly something that I would do maybe 10 years down the line. Up until then, I will make as many guitars as I can. I have lots of friends who have kids who would like to have guitars, and maybe people would like to have guitars made by an amateur. But for now, and also to add to that, I actually like my day job. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next question is from Flor, asking, when are you coming to Argentina?
I'm coming to Argentina next year, I hope. I'm going to go to Argentina soon. I have to go to Flora's workshop and have some fun with her. She was an amazing mentor, and I had such a rich experience with her and women in Lutherie.
All right. Okay. I'll wait real quick, see if we get any more questions. And I really need to compliment you, though. You really can plan anything, and you just get it done. You're quite incredible, actually. And I hope you know that.
Thank you very much.
I know the chat was going crazy the whole presentation with how amazing everything was and how well sorted out you have everything. It's very inspiring.
Oh, thank you very much, Catherine. I'm going to blush in a little bit. Thank you.
This is Jimin. Y'all, I'm just jumping in because I couldn't contain it anymore. I just want to say, I want to give a big round of applause for Yasmeen for literally planning. Like, this woman can literally plan anything. And she was instrumental in pulling this conference together. She had basically been on top of all of us and everything. And so, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jimin. Thank you very much. And it has been an amazing opportunity. I'm so glad I could give back. And I have to say, hearing your voice and not seeing you on my screen, it feels like my conscience is speaking.
I am great. I am the great Wizard of Oz.
Thank you very much. So, because I'm just curious about this, I know because I mostly just do violins and everything right now. What wood are you going to be using for your builds? Do you have any wood in particular that you're looking forward to trying?
Well, for my next build, I got Pau Ferro, but that's because I understood that it is a wood that might be easier to bend. And I know I'm going to break the first couple of blanks that I bend. I'm going to get some practice wood as well. But what I will be using next, to be completely honest, I still don't know. I'm still trying to read about the different kinds of wood and their tonal and acoustic qualities. And after the talks today about the ecological impact of the wood that is used for musical instruments, I'm going to have to give it some very serious consideration as well.
This is very true. Could I ask, and you may have already mentioned some of them, what were some resources that helped you during this? I know the fellowship was really helpful for all that. Were there any books or education material that you particularly enjoyed?
Well, yes. I mean, so there were a few sources. There were a couple of forums on Facebook where I could ask questions. When I started, people were very helpful and they would answer all my questions, but I had to Google everything. I didn't understand what they were saying. Now I can have a conversation about Lutherie and not feel lost. But I also have a few books. I'm happy I can put them on the group. Instagram accounts and YouTube channels. The YouTube channels, so there are luthiers who have YouTube channels where they demonstrate how they do the work and how they fix things. But there are also channels for amateurs who are showing how they are doing their first or second build. And I extract different information from both, but they're both very useful and they add a lot of value to how I approached instrument building.
Okay, very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you so much for sharing and talking with us about all of this. It was really amazing to kind of watch your journey over the last couple months when we were in the fellowship together and just get to know you more through the planning of all of this. You were incredibly instrumental in all of this, and really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm happy for the opportunity to be able to contribute to this conference.
All right. It looks like we have only 2 minutes left. I'll give a second if anyone else has any more questions, but do you have any final remarks, any thoughts, feelings, looking forward to the future or anything?
Absolutely. I personally can't wait to get back to my bench. And one thing that I'm also going to try over the next few months is go to community workshops where I can share bench with other people. It means that I'll have more space and I'll watch other people work as well. I think that's going to be very valuable.
Okay, very nice. And we do have one final question, which is there anything you wish you could have told yourself before you started?
I think, well, when I first started, I definitely felt like I might not be able to make it. And I have to say that I would just tell myself what I have learned to tell myself towards the end, just go for it.
All right, and we actually have, I think we have one more question in the last minute, which is, how do you deal with the sawdust in your home?
Oh, I have never vacuumed so much in my life. That is very difficult. But what I do now is if I'm going to do something that I know is going to produce a lot of dust, I just cover furniture before I start working. But yes, it is a big problem that I think going to a community workshop is going to help. Okay.
All right. So this is great. Thank you so much for joining us back after hosting this morning. About your journey.